Good to go. Thank you.
So agenda, everybody got the agenda?
Yep.
Any additions to the agenda?
Yeah, so there'd be an addition to talk about this, why everyone's on, or the majority of people who aren't MPC are actually on board. So on this call, which is, Antonio, do you want to talk about that for what it is?
Yeah, so I received a letter from the Badlands Amphitheatre in regards to their temporary campground. I believe the temporary campground has been approved for a couple of years, less last year and the year before, I believe. So I bounced and
You want to put that into 5.2
Yes.
of the agenda?
Yeah. And
Okay. Any other additions, comments on the agenda? Can I get somebody to move adoption of the agenda? Art, seconded by Kirk. Any other comments? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Minutes from January 13th meeting. Can I get motion for that? Tony, seconded. Art. I got just one comment, Antonia, under 3.2, craft distillery, manufacturing, storage of spirits, and it says assonated. I'm not sure that's a word.
no, I don't think that's a word either. We flagged that just before the meeting started, so I'll make sure that that's amended.
So that's supposed to be associated, I imagine.
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
so. Yes.
So just a typo there. Any other comments on the agenda? If not, all in favor of the agenda? Carried. Thank you. Summary of development permits. Everybody had a chance to look at the development permits. Any comments on those? Lots of good development permits going on. If,
Just a quick question.
go ahead, Art.
The one for the residents on Green Street? Is that to replace a building that burnt down or something?
No, it's a new house on Green Close in Knapmine, Art.
Oh, in Knapmine. So there was an empty lot there all along.
There's a subdivision that started, I don't know how long ago, but I think there's 5 empty lots. And so the developer's building a couple of spec houses.
Okay,
This is a spec house.
great, thanks.
Which brings up an interesting point. Does the main floor have to be built to 1850, or is it in a protected,
So as
or
of today,
proposed protected?
it's in proposed protected, Tom. Yep. And so they have to follow the requirements. They have to build everything, I think we said it above 1640, no openings below 1640. So because it will be protected in 23.
Yeah. Okay, somebody want to move summary development permits for information purposes? Art, seconded. Kirk. All in favor?
Just, I was going to mention one thing, just there's the sign rebranding, fascia sign for Yang's restaurant. So just more for interest, this is the former Athens restaurant. So they're turning it into a hot pot. Is that right? Hot pot restaurant, Antonia?
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So just
Art?
a question. If they had to get a permit for rebranding on that, how did the Husky turn into a Circle K?
They also had a permit for rebranding,
Oh, okay. I
but
didn't
that
use-
was they put that some time ago.
Okay,
I
before I
didn't.
started. Okay.
Yeah, and this one's really about, they're adding different signage. So if we're taking, so a good example would be Pizza Hut upgraded their sign with a new Pizza Hut sign. So if you're doing that and you're not changing anything, you're not changing it to like a light box or something else like that, we really don't want a permit because it just seems like it's an unnecessary piece of bureaucracy. So, but in this case, they actually changed some of their signage the way it's set up. So, yeah.
Okay.
Or if it's a business change also, if we're doing a business change, then we just want it as a record. So,
Yeah.
which is actually what we did it for Yang's.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. We go down to 4.0 Palliser, Grace Evangelical Lutheran Church. Is that Jerry or Devin?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep, so that's Gary here. I'll be speaking to that file. So we have an application from the surveyor Grant Wallace on behalf of the Lutheran Church of Drumheller. They're proposing a subdivision and consolidation. So essentially lot 3 is going to be split from the north to the south. On the north portion is the manse, which will be separated from the church. And part of the church goes on to a certificate of title that's on the east side of it that they're basically using for like a parking area and driveway. The existing use is institutional, and the proposed use will be institutional and residential. Both institutional and residential are a permitted use under the neighborhood district. The appeal status was deferred by Alberta Transportation to the local level. There were no concerns by adjacent landowners, although I was contacted by the adjacent landowner to the east, who had a misconception that part of his parcel was being subdivided. There was confusion that he thought he had all of lot 4, but basically lot 4 is separated into 3 pieces by a certificate of title. ATCO had no concerns, Alberta Health Services, Apex, no concerns. So basically, yeah, we're creating two new lots by one lot 3, which basically goes the full width of the block. So it has access on the north to Riverside Drive, and on the south side, I believe, is Second Avenue. So they'll with the subdivision, they'll both have legal access. The new lot line placed between the church and the manse will meet the minimum 6-meter requirements for a rear yard. The one concern is the side yard from the manse to the west property line is basically just shy of the 1.2 meter requirements for a side yard. So basically it comes short by about 0.05 meters, or roughly 2 inches. Spoke to the surveyor to recommend that they proceed and put a building permit in to get like a waiver relaxation on that side yard. So as part of the application, as mentioned, there'll be a consolidation, which will improve the situation, because right now there's a shed and part of the entryway into the church basically sits over the property line. So when the consolidation is done, both portions will be on one title. The subdivision proposal lies south of the Red Deer River and is just within the boundary of the flood hazard overlay boundary. While it is within the boundary, it is in the protected zone. And on title, there's also a registered document, 971350666, which allows for access across and through a portion of the east side of that driveway So it kind of straddles onto the neighbor's property and into the area that the church is using for a driveway. So it's to provide an easement for water and sewer, which goes to the parcel on the north side. So we're recommending approval, subject to that it be registered at land titles, all outstanding taxes be paid to the municipality, satisfactory arrangements being made with the municipality for provisions of services at the cost of the developer, concurrent registration of utility easements and right-of-ways is required by relevant authorities, and consolidation of that CFT being a portion of Lot 4, Block 44, Plan 2193 CC, with the newly created lot containing the church on the south portion of the existing Lot 3. Any questions?
I have a question, Jerry. Yeah, I guess I would ask, my first question would be, why now? I mean, that this has existed this way for 50 years, 60 years. So why are they doing this now? What?
I'm assuming they probably have sale for, maybe they're not using the manse anymore and they want to sell it off as a residential property.
Yeah, I seem to remember the surveyor saying something to that effect, was that they wanted to separate the house. The house is actually rented, leased somehow to Darts. And so I think that that's part of the changeovers, that they actually want to divest themselves of that property. So.
And the lot on the east side where the easement and that kind of stuff is, that they're just gonna keep that basically for parking like it is now? They're not wanting to develop that or anything?
Nope, just to remain as it is. Being that the concern is that part of the church building sits across that property line. I'm not sure how that ever got built like that, being on two separate titles. So this will be cleaning up an issue that help fix the situation.
This is Drumheller. We never have instances of things like that.
Okay. Devin, is anything that I missed that you think that may want to add?
No, I think you covered it, Gary. Again, the one thought Gary and I had was just on the west side yard that would technically be non-compliant. So really it's in the applicant's best interest to approach even the town if they want a development permit for that, to get a development permit on record with a variance for that 2 inches. But for the subdivision application itself, the MGA allows allowances for the subdivision authority to essentially approve that lot, even though it doesn't meet that setback. Yeah, so that was my only other comment, but I think you covered that anyways, Gary.
Okay.
So for these, you just want MPC's blessing on this kind of a thing? Do we make a motion, Daryl, or what?
Yeah, the motion is to support the development application as presented, or to not do that, but support it as presented, and then Palliser then takes that as part of their report that goes to council for approval.
Okay.
Right, 'cause you're taking
Any
this to
other
council,
questions? Sorry?
Sorry, Daryl, actually, this wouldn't go to council now.
Doesn't need to. Okay.
No, it would just be signed off on. So again, we bring it to MPC as an opportunity, one, just to make sure the town's informed on subdivisions that are occurring, and if there's any conditions that MPC wants to consider, or any comments, we take that into consideration as well.
Okay.
And it also helps that you know your town better probably than what we do. So I guess it's just to bring it forward to you to maybe pick up on anything that we may have missed that you might see a concern with.
Any other comments or questions? If not, could I get somebody to make the motion of what Daryl said?
I can make the motion, Tom.
Moved by Tony, seconded by Art. Any other discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. So you got that motion, Antonia?
You're muted, Antonia.
We have Tony made a motion to support application file number 80-164 as presented. And then seconded by Art, all in, carried.
Sounds good.
That's good, thank you.
Okay, 5.0 land use bylaw amendments.
I don't know if this is one that we want to do.
Do you want to talk about this in camera, Antonia, or do you want to deal with this other one with Badlands AMP first?
I think Badlands AMP first, and then
Okay.
maybe we should make a motion to go on camera.
Okay. So 5.2, passion play, on-site accommodations. Somebody want to give us the general gist?
Sure, I can do that, Tom. So basically, as Antonia said, from 2015 to 2019, we always just applied for a temporary campground permit for the trailers that our staff are housed in. As you can see in the letter, they're not hooked up to anything. They're just sleeping accommodations. In 2019, there was a change, and we realized in subsequent conversations with Tracy Brees that because we were only using them 2.5 months a year, and then they were sitting dormant, but sitting dormant would need a change to a permanent campground. So we investigated that possibility and said, okay, well, maybe that'll work for us. It might actually be a good thing. And then as you saw in the letter, the last we kind of left off was Tracy saying, there's some changes coming. Let me look into this. We'll get back to you. But then I think shortly thereafter, she moved on. And then shortly after that, we got into the wonderful situation of the pandemic. So we've kind of left this alone. I guess we should have maybe been more on top of it, but we've been fighting many fires. The gist of it is that now we're coming up and we're trying desperately to get 2022 Passion Play off the ground. Elisa is here because she writes all those contracts. And of course, one of the issues in writing contracts, even if we can secure staff, which is another issue, is where do I live? What are my accommodations like? How does this work? And we've realized, okay, we got this issue of some outstanding things that we did not resolve. And then we've got the issue of should it be a permanent campground? And then, of course, the issue of the new zoning puts us into the Badlands zone, which you're not supposed to do anything with. So we're kind of looking at that and going, we kind of got to get some answers relatively quickly if we're going to be successful in getting this season off the ground. And at the end of the letter, we are, of course, then suggesting, can we get a temporary or apply for, we don't want to waste our time or yours applying for something that doesn't work. So apply for another temporary campground permit with the understanding that once that permit is completed, we must do one of two things, either get a permanent campground situation in place at the site or move those trailers off the site for good and say goodbye to that idea and hope that we can put together tiny homes or something for staff, because finding staff accommodations in Drumheller is next to impossible. So that's kind of where we sit. So we thought the board considered it, wrote the letter and said, okay, let's try this. Let's bring it forward to the MPC and see what the wisdom in the room would tell us to do.
Okay, so does, I guess my question to Antonia and Daryl would be, so does MPC have the power to recommend like having a temporary campground permit? I think we did that something with that for the Knack Mine campground, didn't we? I can't remember.
No,
No.
we didn't do it for the Knack Mine campground because we knew there was going to be too many issues that could come back and basically bite MPC and council. So we left it because it wasn't land owned by anybody that was involved with the temporary campground part. So like I think here, so there's a couple issues. So one is that this parking lot area that you've got, which is zone Badlands, we are doing things where when we did the land use bylaw change last year, some of the stuff got painted with a pretty broad brush. And so we're now in the process as we come up with them or as we find them to change them to more an appropriate zoning. So the land that you've got where the trailers sit on, as well as the parking lot, and well as, so the trouble is that you've got your actual site where the stages is all part of something much larger. So it's Badlands as well. But so
Right.
we would look at changing the parking lot area to something that's more appropriate zoning for the parking lot and stuff. So that's just something that we just do. We don't need to go through a change on that. Council gave us that authority last year when we made some changes. That part's okay. I think that, so there's a couple of pieces. So one is that some of your trailers, 8 of them, sit on property that doesn't belong to you. So I think we'd have to enter into some sort of an agreement with what does that look like. But I think pieces of it that Tony was talking about is that you just want to make sure. So the whole idea about this campground, so you're not unique, right? So as a matter of fact, this was sort of brought about as a result because everyone's about whataboutism. Because Gangster has a temporary campground in the industrial park. And then when we went to Gangster, they said, hey, what about the Passion Play? Why aren't you dealing with them the same way you're dealing with us? Which is why Tracy then started talking to you about this campground site. So I think that part of it is that, like, I think what is the resolution for all these trailers on site? I do see that the safety codes inspection, that was part of the concern that everyone had before, was that do these actually have, the safety codes satisfied with the way these things are set up? And I guess if they are, right? So that's good. That's a good resolution there. So I think that Antonia talked about a potential of screening these things from the area, and right? So is that one of the concerns that Badlands AMP has? Is the screening of these? I know you see that you said that in the letter there's no concerns in all of the reviews that people ever said about that. So yeah, I'm not sure. So I guess our answer is that, so if there's a temporary campground, so it's temporary campgrounds need to be applied for every year. So if you are applying for a temporary campground, that's different than a permanent one. But I think and there's different conditions applied with it. So I guess if there's a temporary campground being applied for, wouldn't be today, it would be, what are you looking to do with it, if anything, for 2022? And I understand the financial severity of COVID, and it's what it's brought to the Passion Play. But yeah, I guess just from our perspective, there's a couple things that need to be done here. So you need to tell us if you're thinking that this is something you want to do permanently, and then how it's set up. And if it's a permanent campground versus a temporary campground. I think temporary, if you're coming with a temporary, Antonia, there's potential to do one more year of this, with the idea of needing to set out a fairly clear set of definitions about what needs to happen if it's going to become permanent. So I think that's a long-winded answer to your question, Tom, and all. So
I guess I would kind of chime in here. I know we've had council discussions, and I must admit I'm a little bit biased in this regarding temporary seasonal housing for workers in Drumheller. And the reason I say I'm biased is that my daughter is the director of visitor services at the Royal Tyrrell Museum. And she regularly hires about 25 more people for the summer than what they do during most of the year. She hires as many people from the town as she can, but there's, a lot of the younger students, whatever, don't have any transportation out to the museum, so they're not really interested. So she ends up hiring a lot of people from out of town, and many of these people are university students who are interested in paleontology and archaeology and stuff, and they just want to, experience the Royal Tyrrell Museum and will do a job. They don't get paid very much, so they don't have very much money. And she has absolutely a heck of a time trying to help them find accommodation in Drumheller for the summer, because there just isn't any. I mean, a lot of the former, basement suites and that kind of stuff, those are all now Airbnbs. Yeah. And they're getting $200 a night for some of those places. So there is a heck of a problem with getting people into the community, the people who are necessary to help with the hundreds of thousands of tourists that we get every year, and accommodating those people. And I know council has been scratching their head, and I remember a few years ago, and Tony might remember, we even looked at putting up a temporary camp in the high-grade industrial area, similar to Gangster, and kind of running it from a town perspective, just for temporary seasonal workers. So I absolutely empathize with, the Passion Play gets a lot of people from out of town coming in to work with the Passion Play, and that's a bit of a function of, the Passion Play has been going on for a lot of years. And I can remember the original Passion Play probably had 300 volunteers from the community doing most of the stuff for the Passion Play. And over the years, many of those volunteers have decided, I've done my 10 years with the Passion Play volunteering and I don't want to do it anymore. So you need to have people from out of town come in and fill some of those roles. So I'm not sure what the answer is, but I would certainly be in favor of this temporary campground at least, and then looking at it further. And as long, to me, and MPC's priority is always safety. Number one, if it's safe, has to be absolutely safe. And MPC absolutely demands that. So if these things are safe, then, that might be the best we can do, at least for a year. And then look at, something a little bit better, more permanent, if and when, Passion Play actually has a season this year and generates some money. That would be nice.
Yeah, and Tom, you've kind of hit the nail on the head as far as we are predominantly outside because the theater professionals we hire are from across Canada. So they need a place. A lot of them are university students. They don't come with vehicles. Putting them somewhere else means transportation issues, although we'll look into Gangster. That's just around the corner. But it's definitely a deep problem for us. We did, if you go back to, I came in 2009. Before that, there was some horrific trailers that our staff were staying in. And just really, as soon as I showed up, that summer, we threw them all out by the front deck and our door by the highway and said, free, take them away, please. Because we had this reputation for mice and itchy skin and bad beds. Since then, we've tried to get really nice units. We've turned a lot away. Some are old, but they are very clean, very nice looking places inside. So we've tried our best to make that a very good place because we want these. We need these people to come back every year. So we can't afford to give them a bad experience. Elisa, what would you be saying?
Yeah, I've been the one responsible for assisting with accommodation for the past number of years. And I do know that having our trailers on site have been a big draw and a big deciding factor for our staff coming in, because we do, as much as even speaking to this year, we are trying to hire as much locally as we can, but in order to get the professionals who we're looking for, even locally means Calgary, and those people still aren't able to drive out every day. So even though they are based in Calgary, they still need somewhere to stay on our site. So even bringing the professionals of the caliber that we need this option of housing, and looking at rentals in town has gotten more and more difficult every single year. We do still have a few people who choose to go that route, and I've been assisting with them, and we have been able to find some, but there's no way I would be able to find enough for our whole staff. We do have our annual health and safety review coming up at the beginning of February. We had a meeting this morning as a part of that, and the trailer safety has been a component that we've been discussing within that. So that involves our new site security protocols, which will be placed in each trailer, and our emergency documents that go in each trailer. So site security has been a big focus the past month. And on top of that, the trailer security and safety has been a big focus. So just upping everything, upping all of our security protocols, upping that level, and making sure that we have that documented and placed in every trailer.
And just on that note, if someone does want to rent in town, that's at their expense. And we're not a really super high paying place. The trailers on site, they are complimentary. They don't have to pay a dime for being there, staying there, using the washrooms, the bathrooms, the lodge rooms, and the rest of it. That's all part of the contract. So that's why they look at us and say, well, thank you for paying this. And boy, I'm sure glad I don't have to put out any money once I'm there. We then also will have bicycles and a car they can book out if they have to go get groceries. So we do our best to give these folks to Drumheller a stellar experience, safe, clean, wonderful place to be. And for the most part, they've just come back year after year. Bit tougher this year, given the current situation.
Go ahead, Art.
Like what you said about the museum and Badlands Passion and Gangster, it almost sounds like this is a recurring theme, these temporary campgrounds. And perhaps we should have something actually defining what a temporary campground consists of and our expectations drawn up in.
Yeah, in the old land use bylaw, Art, this used to be called a work camp. So like not this specifically, but we actually had the definition of a work camp in there, which was very much like a construction work camp. And that's, as a matter of fact, what the Gangster site had been set up as, right? But those are ATCO trailers permanently installed, proper sewage and inland water. Like it's no different than you'd see in Fort McMurray or Youngstown or someplace like that, right? So,
right,
yeah.
But this other entity, a sort of temporary campground sort of thing.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's something we ought to wrap our heads around.
Yeah, and I think that's probably part of the next piece of the discussion for bylaw changes that we're thinking of, right? So,
Go ahead, Tony.
Yeah, I would just reiterate some of the points you made, Tom, that, our focus here is the protection of people and property. There are some past concerns there to do with the type of housing, and electrical comes to mind specifically. We recognize the Passion Play is a big event for our town as well, and it is a big tourist draw. So I think for sake of ease to move forward, that one could consider a temporary permit with the idea that it would evolve into a permanent, but with that, how the deficiencies would be dealt with. That gets you up and running. It gets through your other big financial commitment on the other. But I think if we can look down the road and see a plan is in place to deal with some of these, might be a win-win on both sides. Recognizing that seasonal workers are tight in this town and probably will continue to be that way. A permanent solution needs to be somewhere down the road, not only in your business, but in others as well there. So I think one of the big concerns is bridging that safety issue, and then hopefully have you guys go on this year with a permanent plan going forward.
That would be greatly appreciated. And know this, that we're not super big fans of the trailers either. We have gone to the Calgary Real Estate Board. We put in grants to see us build some kind of a better situation, like unto Banff Center of the Arts. We are positioning ourselves to be the Badlands Center for the Arts, where we will be a hub in this area. So the places we want to have are 12 months a year, tiny home kind of cabin concepts where artists and residents could use them, and we could have different types of experiences all through the year as an artistic and a cultural place. So the trailers are not in even our best interest, but like you said, for this coming year, if we can get through another year and then keep planning, that would be greatly appreciated.
So I guess what I'm hearing is that, so if you put in a development permit for this year for a temporary campground, I guess it'd be great if you had sometime over this earlier summer, a bit of an idea, proposal back to us, not unlike the letter from John to everyone, saying what you guys are thinking about for 23, right? Because I just heard you think that you'd like to do something different for 23 yourselves. So
Correct.
What that looks like, and even if it's like, here's what we're hoping for in 23 and 24 and 25, at least it gives everybody an idea of what the plan looks like going forward. Because I think maybe what I'm hearing, at least from Tony, is I don't think we want to be back here in January of 23 talking about, hey, can we get an approval for a temporary campground?
Right.
So,
Which is basically what I'm saying, allow you guys to
Yeah.
go ahead with a roadmap. Right,
Yeah.
so that this would be another one-time temporary permit, but here's the roadmap that would deal with all of the issues to evolve it into a permanent, whatever we want to call it, campground or work site
Yes.
or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
showing us the roadmap ahead with a timeline as to how everything is dealt with, right?
Yeah.
Devin, did you have a comment there?
I did have a question actually, but then I just got the answer to it reading through the letter again. So I was just going to ask how water and sewer works. So it looks like they use shared common washroom in
Yes.
the lodge. So
Any further comments from anyone? Do we need a motion for this, or?
no, that just came as information. So I think the direction back to the group there is to say that provide a development permit to Antonia for a temporary campground for the 2022 season. And in part of our consideration of it, we would put conditions in to say you need to provide something to us around what are you looking to do in 23 and beyond. Right?
Yeah.
So
Correct.
good. I've got, so I look at that as good news. So I'm going to give you some bad news. I don't know if any of you guys know this, but I'm going to actually do this. Give me 1 second. So this is one of the things that we do. So can everyone see the screen?
Yeah.
Yep. So one of the things that so culverts exist throughout the town and throughout the province, but anything over 5 feet in diameter or volume equivalent is what's called a bridge structure, and they're required to be inspected every year, up to every 3 years and a report given to the province. So we did a number of them over the last year, including the one that's in red on the property here. And you have two. So you actually have another one that sort of goes right in front of the building. This one where the red is your culvert, and it is in abysmal condition, like to the point that it's close to being unsafe. So just thinking about, you're going to have to figure out a plan to actually do something with that, whether it means removing it or replacing it.
Yes.
But if I'm not mistaken, it's a big culvert. Like I want to say,
I think it's a 4. Yeah. I believe it's 48 inches. We have had Jason.
It's bigger than that. It's bigger
Is
than
it?
that because
Okay.
we would not inspect a 48-inch culvert at only 60 and above. So
Yeah, maybe it might have looked like 48 because you're right. It had collapsed on the front. We had to get the sawzalls in there and cut that rusted metal off. Jason Nibb has come by
Okay.
And he's looking at that situation because, yeah, we've
Okay.
been watching it for a few years. We
Yeah.
actually wonder, and we're talking to Jason about if it would be possible to bring that culvert all the way up through that draw toward the lodge in order to then cover that all over and buy ourselves a much larger parking lot. So that's a question we've had for Jason. He hasn't come back to us yet, but we've been
Right.
in conversation.
Good.
Yeah.
Yeah, just, and the only reason I'm bringing it up to you is just more of an FY, because we've done, again, we've identified some culverts. But this one, if this fails, of course, that's a pretty big
Oh, yeah.
chunk of water that then floods the Passion Play site.
Yes.
So,
Yeah. And right up there by the lodge, they have had that one when the ski hill was there. They didn't take care of it. It blocked up and it did run through the basement of the lodge at that point in time. So yeah, we're keeping our eye on those. And Jason's been helping us with those consultations. We'll hopefully come up with something soon.
Good. Yeah, just, and you're not alone. Like there are
No,
other
no.
private culverts in town, and there are lots of town culverts that are like that too, in Alberta Transportation and CN.
Yeah.
So, but we just wanted, it just came up actually. I was texting our infrastructure guy to send me this drawing. So
Yeah.
So one other thing, we're talking about redrawing some of the boundary lines for the Badlands and that. I know the chunks of the Passion Play site are basically in the Badlands, which is supposed to be very restricted development. So I'm just wondering, are we looking at, and I'm, a perfect example to me is the amphitheater site. I mean, the amphitheater technically is absolutely right on the Badlands, and we're not supposed to do anything until right to the toe of the Badlands. But the amphitheater is a perfect example to me of a wonderful use of the Badlands. I mean, it creates incredible acoustics in the amphitheater. And so I'm just wondering, but the way it is being in the Badlands, that you couldn't really do anything with it. So is that going to be redrawn, or what are we doing with that, Daryl?
So there's two different parts there, Tom. So I'm going to do this again. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. So this parcel right here, which is zone Badlands, which is the parking lot. This is one of those ones I talked about at the beginning where it just said, we'll change this to something that's more appropriate, because this has all been drawn. So it's not. Now, this is a legal parcel of land, not unlike this is a legal parcel or this is a legal parcel. So this is also a legal parcel, of which only a small portion of it is actually not Badlands. So in order to sort of exclude this piece in here where the Badlands site actually is, would have to be a subdivision, which would involve Gary and Devon and company, right? The other part would be is I think we might just do something to the effect that says, you can't build anything back in here, but if you're doing trail development or some light, like you can do passive recreational stuff. So that I'd look at as trails and some other things. But if you're looking to put a Starbucks up here, for instance, it's something silly to say, right? Or over here, right?
Yeah.
Then that would be a no-go, right? And it would be consistent wherever we're doing that but for the most part, you wouldn't be able to run the utilities up here anyway, because it'd be cost prohibitive. So I think it's just a matter of saying, because the trouble is that in 10 years time, if someone says, I'd actually like to pay to remove this hill right in here and expand the seating area or something, well, I wouldn't want to draw a line that says, well, you couldn't go in here, right? I think that's, so does that answer your question, Tom?
Yeah, no, I know we were looking at some different areas up and down the valley that we are kind of redrawing the lines a little bit. And I know the Passion Play was one of them.
Yeah. So that's this piece in here we'd be changing to again, something that's more appropriate. I don't know what that looks like. I don't know what the zoning of that it would be, but it wouldn't be Badlands for here. So.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on that? Anybody have any other questions? So I'd like to thank everybody from the Passion Play for attending the meeting and illuminating us, and keep your fingers crossed, maybe
boy.
you'll actually get a season this year. That would certainly be nice. I'm looking forward to Tom Cochran. Saw the original concert, and let me tell you, one of the best experiences I've ever had in the evening in Drumheller. Tom Cochran, Life is a Highway, 25th anniversary, sitting in the Badlands, sun going down, absolutely quality of life issue for Drumheller right there.
Well,
So,
keep your eye on that because there's another band we've bid on for the Friday night. So it'd be a 2-band weekend so we can keep people in town using the hotels, doing whatever.
Okay.
We can't announce it yet, but it should be hitting the ground, I would think, in the next few weeks.
well, I told you about 5440, didn't I?
Well, I know. Yeah, we're looking at that too, Tom. We take all the requests.
Absolutely.
You bet. All right. Thank you, folks. Much appreciated. And we'll get that application in as soon as we can and not take up any more of your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
So we need a motion to go in camera from someone. Tony, seconded. Kurt, all in favor of going in camera. So this would be because it's land. How does that go for MPC, Daryl?
Yes, it would be a land issue because we're talking about proposed changes to land bylaws. So
But keep CAO on.
Yeah, there's some, don't you have to quote some regulation or MGA guideline or something?
Yeah, we can pull it. for the
Tony will
next-
figure that out.
Yeah, it's a FOIP act, so we'll do it.